Good afternoon. This is Paula Gwynn from CoreTech Services. Thank you for joining us today for Tech Tuesdays. Today we are joined by Chris Shelda, Senior Solution Architect, Cloud Solutions for CoreTech. A few housekeeping things. We will be recording this event if you choose to go to it later. If you have questions, please feel free to use the chat window or raise your hand and we'll be able to open the line and let you ask the question. We would love for it to be interactive if you're comfortable with that. And I will turn it over to Chris. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you, Paula. Great, so let's get going. A lot of good information to cover today. So really what we're going to talk about today, the overall topic is understanding the differences between purchasing Azure through an EA and versus through an Azure CSP. So we'll get right into that. And so the agenda here, I'll do some introductions here and then we'll go through the different Azure procurement options, including EA, CSP, and some others. Doing a kind of detailed comparison of EA versus CSP. Then we'll get into why CoreTech CSP and what may be some differentiators that we have amongst compared to other CSPs out there. And the path to get to CSP, a call to action of what you can do if you are interested in taking that path. And then we have some questions at the end we can leave some time for. So introduction-wise, my name, like Paula said, is Chris Shelda. I am a Senior Solutions Architect that covers both Azure as well as Modern Workplace lines of business at CoreTech, and been here for 13 years now. First about 8 years in the consulting side, directly working with customers on projects, and about the last 5 years have been focusing on solution architecture and digging deeply into all the aspects of Azure, helping customers understand where that might fit for them, their business needs, tying that to different solutions and architecting those, and helping large customers from enterprise level to small customers to SaaS providers, and helping them all achieve their business goals. So hopefully that all that experience I've gathered over the years, I can kind of help direct you in terms of where you might want to go from an Azure procurement perspective. So in general, the options here, and these aren't necessarily completely inclusive of every little option that might be available, but these are definitely the highest majority of ways that you would use or you would procure Azure. So first is EA, which is most people know about. It's an enterprise agreement that is basically, I'd say, kind of confined to the larger organizations. You do typically have to have about 500 seats at least in your organization to qualify for an EA, and it's becoming maybe a little bit more difficult to obtain an EA at this point in time if you're kind of in that range there. And the reason is because Microsoft has additional options now to service all their customers. And CSP, being that stands for Cloud Solution Provider, so a partner like CoreTech, we are a CSP, specifically a direct CSP, and so we provide this cloud solutions through Azure as well as kind of Microsoft 365 licensing direct to the customer, and then all the billing. We'll kind of talk about that a little later. Like we have a relationship with Microsoft, so we're kind of in between handling some of the services for the customer directly, having that direct relationship. And then MCA is a newer model that's called the Microsoft Customer Agreement. This is a way that an organization can go direct to Microsoft, and instead of going through an EA, could go direct to Microsoft in a different direction there, and still get the same kind of do the invoicing and that type of thing through their organization. And then pay-as-you-go or direct, that is typically, while we do see some organizations use this, I wouldn't say this is great for large organizations. Maybe this is good if you're dabbling, kind of starting up. If you needed to get off the ground quickly sometimes, may make sense, but pay-as-you-go direct is in one individual's name. It's not really intended for an organization per se, because it's under that one person's financial responsibility and also their credit check for them too. So typically recommend you don't do that in any sort of organization perspective. I would say at least go with CSP or MCA if you're can't qualify EA, that type of thing. So yeah, that one usually only by credit card as well. So we'll really be talking about the first top two there, the EA and the CSP today. Those are two most popular ones. So what we usually see from customers and that are coming to us and we're talking to them are certain expected business outcomes, and I'm going to tie this into what we're able to do potentially a CSP for our customers. Usually customers come to us saying, hey, financially we're looking to try to reduce our costs. We want to have a better understanding of our financial management of our usage in Azure, better insight on what's going on, how is it trending, be able to optimize. And they also are looking typically for the ability to increase their agility in the cloud, quickly turn things around, and allow for those optimizations in that aspects, as well as performance, looking for just better manageability, visibility, and potentially supportability across all of their kind of cloud platforms with Microsoft, with Azure, and even potentially Microsoft 365. So that you'll see how that ties in here. So getting into the meat here. This is kind of, I know a little bit of an eye chart. I'll kind of go through it here. Just kind of going to give it a detailed description of really the differences side by side of EA versus CSP. So EA being an enterprise agreement, it is an agreement. So it is a contract. It's a 3-year contract. Usually has some annual terms in there as well. You could potentially get some custom terms in there. Usually have to be pretty large to have Microsoft change their standard terms for you, but if needed in exception scenarios, you can do that. On the CSP side, it is a monthly contract typically. Now, based on the CSP, they may have some other terms maybe that they introduce, but otherwise, from a Microsoft perspective, it's just their standard terms from their Microsoft customer agreement that you would sign as kind of working with the CSP. From a billing perspective, enterprise agreement, you do have an annual monetary commitment. So basically you say, okay, I think we're gonna spend this much money on Azure, and you pay that up front for the annual, for each year. And then if you go over that, you'll pay overages quarterly for that. So sometimes that's advantageous. If you need to pay everything up front, potentially, then maybe that's the way to go. But with cloud solution provider, it's very flexible because it's really monthly in arrears for the services used for, I'd say, the vast majority of services used. You can elect for some things to pay up front, but for the vast majority, you can really just pay monthly now for everything else that you use, so that you can kind of think of it as utility, right? As you use it, your electric or your gas bill, right? You pay for that month in the previous month of what you used. So if you use less next month, you pay less, right? And the types of services and products that are available, so all Microsoft products, right, in the EA. Cloud Solution Provider Program, so it's going to be Azure is primarily, right? And then from a lot of the licensing capabilities around Office 365, Windows 10, Enterprise Mobility Security Suite, Dynamics 365, and some other kind of licenses that are in between those. Those are all available through a CSP. And also, server licenses, SQL licenses too, and RDS CALs. You can actually get a CSP too. From financial management, in an EA, you're going to use the Azure native cost management tools, which some customers are able to use fairly well. A lot of times they have to extend it themselves to get the insights and information that they need. From a CSP perspective, the CSP is expected to provide some sort of financial visibility to the customer. I'd say your mileage may vary, right, depending on which CSP you're working with there. But we'll get into what CoreTech does specifically. But just know that is one thing if you're looking for a CSP, to make sure that you have some solid financial information they'll be providing for you through that program. And as a reseller, where are you purchasing from, right? Who's the reseller in the relationship? From an EA, you go through a licensing service provider. So, one of the big distributors typically that are out there. And that's the relationship from a kind of transaction. And from CSP, the CSP, so the cloud solution provider themselves, is who you would transact with. They're the ones that are going to bill you for that usage and for the licensing through that program. Potential discounts, and the EAs, we have seen some discounts. Modest discounts can be had, but more and more we're seeing that unless you have extremely large annual monetary commit, not seeing a lot of discounts off of kind of like the retail pricing there for Azure at least. And on the CSP, potentially you can get some discounts. It does depend on the CSP partner and how they kind of potentially wrap some other services into there and how they want to transact. So that is up to their discretion. The customer resource or customer permissions on Azure resources. So as an EA, you fully own the subscription and everything there. Absolutely yours. On CSP, you do really own that subscription. It is the CSP's discretion of whether to give you up to the full ownership on that subscription. There's different CSPs do different things, and we'll talk about what CoreTech does on that later, but be aware that, yeah, you can get up to the full ownership. So it is yours. You can take it with you if you aren't satisfied, right, with the CSP, you can move it, that type of thing. Provisioning resources. So in an EA, it's just a customer, right? You have full ownership. On a CSP, again, if you have up to full ownership, you can provision all the resources that you want yourself, and you could rely on the CSP to provision things for you, depending on what type of, maybe they have some automations or some capabilities that you could, roll something out easier, potentially. Support models. So on an EA, you would typically purchase a Microsoft technical support plan to cover, in this instance, Azure, let's just say, at an additional cost. So there might be unified support or premier support that you would pay for to get that type of cloud support. On the CSP side, the CSP is required to actually provide you with support. So some sort of either advanced support for partners or premier really support for partners is the other one, depending on which one the CSP has elected to go with. Some that should be able to pass through. Sometimes it might be a per incident model. Might be some managed services tied in, so an unlimited, who knows? It really depends on the CSP. We'll talk again about what CoreTech does in a little bit. And subscription ownership. So in both situations, the customer is the one that's supposed to own the subscription. And like I said a little bit earlier with the CSP, you can move that to another CSP or move out of that subscription to another model if you needed to. You are not just completely bound and stuck with the CSP that you've gone with. So that's kind of I think in some ways built in to ensure that the CSP that you're working with is giving you what you need and servicing you well, so that they're maintaining that relationship and adding value. Because yeah, you could leave. So in a CSP model, or actually I had one more thing here I want to mention here. So a couple other things. Enterprise Dev Test, so that's a specific type of subscription that you get some discounts on some Windows licensing and a couple of PaaS services when you're specifically doing dev and test. If you have an EA, that might be a good reason to keep that certain subscription itself, and we'll talk about how you can do this differently. You have multiple subscriptions different places, but you might keep your dev test subscription on the EA, but you may have some other benefits that you would be worth going with a CSP for your production subscriptions, for example. And other things too about services available in Azure specifically is that there's no classic resources available in CSP. It is ARM only, so the Azure Resource Management Model only, which if you're not there already, I recommend you get there, because classic is at some point going to be decommissioned at some point. And the other thing is Azure Marketplace. So all bring your own license third-party products are available in the CSP, and there are some pay-as-you-go offerings. The majority of those ones I've seen are available in the CSP. It is up to the vendor in terms of whether they publish that to the CSP. But in most cases, if you're running something, let's say kind of long-term from a third-party marketplace item, you're probably better off cost-wise going with bring your own license anyways. So we haven't seen that typically be much of a blocker for many customers. So the contractual structure, just how this works, and kind of illustrates on the bottom, I'll show you that's the Microsoft customer agreements. You still have an agreement with Microsoft that they're passing their online service terms, their SLAs to you, and you can hold them to that. They're basically in that contractual relationship with you and what they're going to provide you. And then you have a relationship with a CSP in this case, right? We have CoreTech services here in the middle, where we would have some sort of agreement where you say, this is what our SLAs are going to be for providing support, and this is what our terms are going to be for payment wise, and we handle that on the front end with you for all your billing and subscription support. And then on the back end, CoreTech works with Microsoft to handle the bills that they send us. So that's kind of just how that relationship works there. So now that we kind of talked about the differences between EA and CSP generically, right? I'd like to get in a little bit more of what CoreTech does, because I do believe we do some things a little bit uniquely in in order to differentiate ourselves and add some value for our customers. And as we've been doing this for a number of years, we've been ongoing improving our program and making it better for our customers, and mostly based on their feedback. So just to kind of go over this in general. First of all, one of the benefits is you would get, as part of a relationship with CSP and with CoreTech, is that you would get an Azure Modern Workplace Advisory Services. So I do run some of those myself, and basically that means is that we have resources that would work with you with your projects. Hey, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the business goals and the requirements you're trying to get at? And how does that tie to certain Azure services? How much would that cost? Maybe there's different services to be better for you, more optimized. And that's a no-cost service that we work with our customers. Because at the end of the day, if our success is based on your success. So we want to make sure that you have kind of that experience, expertise to help you guys to be successful in your endeavors using Azure and Modern Workplace. Secondarily, at no cost, we would be able to do a quarterly Azure workshops and cost optimization. So basically, think of these kind of a little bit like roadmaps and where you're headed, and having like regular sync points on helping to just add some value to educating you on what's coming and what you can use, and then looking at how you've done things. If we haven't already been working really closely, at least we'll get in touch with you quarterly and look at what we can do for cost optimizations as well. Bronze managed services, so it's our base managed services. That just means that we do have 24/7 support, so via phone or email. So if you do have any issues on the Microsoft Azure platform, we'd be able to open a ticket for you, maybe even solve that instead of opening a ticket with Microsoft on that for you. That's just included for you. And then the Azure Management Suite, which we'll get into, I believe, in a couple slides. This is a portal that we've created to provide that transparency around financial management and governance around your subscriptions, to give you a kind of an all-up view of what's happening in your environment. A lot of times it's hard to kind of dig into where exactly everything is in the portal, and to see an all-up view, especially from a leadership perspective. This has really been beneficial for our customers on a financial basis to see what they're spending and what they're going to be spending. Microsoft Premier Support is what we've invested in to get the top level support for our customers. We'll get direct to tier 3 support when we put a call in for Microsoft with get it within like a lot of times an hour of callbacks with the highest severity type of support cases. And we do have a TAM, technical account manager, assigned to us that we can use to escalate cases on your behalf too. And like I mentioned before, just with CSP, you pay for what you use. We don't require any upfront commitment. And then you do get some prioritized consulting services. If you do have some things like some sort of like app modernization or other types of IT projects, you'll get some prioritized consulting services are available to you. So some other things too around CoreTech. In general, we're looking to help you innovate, save costs, find that agility, give you transparency of what's happening in your environment by providing you simplified billing and then proactive support. So that's kind of that model there. And I'll go into, like I said, more detail on the Azure Management Suite. And we can't even integrate that with their financial systems. We've seen a lot of customers very happy about that, where they can basically have those chargebacks, chargebacks tied directly into the ERP and be able to manage that kind of with their existing tool sets. And we have very, very deep security focus as well. We have a CISO who works both on staff, kind of internally for our systems, and also externally, customer facing, to help our customers improve their security posture. So you'll be able to take advantage of him there. And a very, very deep bench of Azure consultants, very experienced, a lot of expertise. We've had a lot of projects under our belts and helped a lot of customers be successful in Azure. And one of those things, a way to kind of prove our expertise, is this is a level of certification from Microsoft, one of the top levels in the Azure space, called the Azure Expert MSP. And very grueling to get through this. We have to go through some things every year, but this does separate really the best for the best of the best from everyone else in terms of being able to be a managed service provider in the Azure space. And really what they check for us is ensure that we have demonstrated customer success in delivering services around Azure, based from like a sales perspective and project perspective, demonstrate extensive skilling. So we have to have a minimum of 25 full-time employees with the current Azure certifications to show our technical expertise. Had to have vested in Microsoft Premier Support or Advanced Support, in our case, Premier Support. And then we do basically an annual audit. It's a very, very intense annual audit, 64-step audit carried out by an independent auditor around, how do we manage things, how do we secure things, just our expertise in general around new services and offerings with Azure, and that we're following ITIL and compliance and a number of things too. So we definitely are proud of this designation here. Is difficult to achieve and maintain, but I think that's for a reason, because the large organizations out there have asked Microsoft, hey, give me the best Azure partner, and the list of gold partners out there is very vast. They needed to have some designation of who is truly the best and how can that be proven, and this is a way that they've done that. One other thing too, I think I don't have the exact count. I know it's probably under 70 in the world of these Azure Expert MSPs, and we were one of the first 5 to obtain this certification too. And this is another thing too, just to give you an illustration of how we help our customers. It's really, we call it the cloud journey, helping you to continue on your cloud journey and enhance what you're doing, taking you from phase to phase. And just the further you go to the right, the more value there is, the more automation, the more kind of, you hear things like the DevOps, right? Cloud Center of Excellence. Basically, this is kind of our view, our vision is this, to help our customers, truly partner with them to help them achieve more and to progress upon their cloud journey. And this is the CoreTech Azure Management Suite, which we've heard some really good things about from our customers. They do believe this is something very unique that we offer. Main thing is that this tracks your consumption on a basically day-to-day basis. It's 36 hours behind the real time, but it's near real time. So you can see where you're at within the month, as opposed to waiting, was it a week or so after, that month end, and you get an invoice, you're like, whoa, I didn't know we were spending that much money. Why did we leave this server running? We would have turned that off. I would have known, right? That we hear that a lot. So that's what this tool primarily was for initially, was just giving you some insight into what you're spending on a day-to-day basis. We can now do budget management and budget alerting with alerts and notifications for that. Mentioned we can integrate the financial systems, as well as we have some governance capabilities, looking at some audit logs and some other capabilities in Azure, surfacing those like Azure Security Center, Azure Advisory, kind of notifications there. So kind of an all-up view, but the main thing is going to be the financial piece of this, which we've heard a lot of good things about. So the piece too, and this is optional, is our managed services, but it's something that we have a lot of customers take advantage of, and really help them to, what I believe is, let them focus on what they do best, right? When our customers, they come in, they have unique skill sets, which is tied to what they're trying to achieve as their business, but there's a lot of things that come along with IT, right? Keeping things running and keeping things maintained and monitored proactively, secured, and managed in general, and just doing a lot of those changes and adds and just making sure you're keeping compliance and making sure things are highly available and you have disaster recovery set up, backups, right? These are types of things we've invested in a lot of tools to help, there's really leading tools in this space to help with those things. This comes with our managed services, those tools on the right side there. And we have a number of different packages. So if you're interested in that, we can definitely talk through how we can help your business with that too. So given all that, some benefits to CSP, and hopefully you've seen some benefits there and that might be interesting to you. And so here's some paths to CSP. And just so you know, basically you have a Azure subscription, you can have multiple subscriptions, and each subscription has to be tied to one procurement method. But the interesting thing is that you could have one subscription tied to one procurement method, another subscription tied to another procurement method. Depends on how you do that and how you want to proceed. But for example, like I mentioned, the enterprise dev task might stay on the EA, but yet your production might go to CSP. So you can kind of mix and match there. You may not get all the benefits of the CSP, of course, on those others that are non-CSP, but there are definitely some different patterns out there that different customers have done. And so in order to get to CSP, you'd say, okay, I have one or more subscriptions, I want to move to CSP. How do I get there? So if you're starting from EA, and as long as we're going to be staying in the same Azure AD tenant, If you work with an Azure Expert MSP partner, such as CoreTech, we have access to a tool called the EA to CSP transfer tool. This is truly the easy button. So really just we need to work with whoever account owner is for the subscription or subscriptions that we're working on and send them a transfer request, and everything gets moved over, and you're going to be like, is it moved over yet? And we're going to be like, yep. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that because nothing changed. It's like, exactly. That's the point. So it's very simple, very easy to do. Sometimes we have to go through some little processes to make sure everything is in line there, but for the most part, that's very simple, no impact to your current subscriptions, which is great. If you're starting from an MCA or pay-as-you-go and going to CSP, that's possible to do. It's a little more process involved there. Now, as long as it's, again, same Azure AD tenant, do what's called a resource move, moving all the resources in one subscription to another. Now, except for a very select few resource types, should be able to move everything. There's a few of them that there's a couple, let's say post-task or pre-task that they have to do before and after, right, that you do the migration, but those are well documented and we've done this a number of times. Really, when you move everything at once, if you can move everything at once from the subscription to subscription with this process, again, really no true impact to your environment at that point. So that is another method there too. And then the other way too is you start new, right? If you want to start a new Azure subscription, you can start with us as a CSP, and we'll start up a blank subscription, give you access to that, and you're off and you're running. So those are the main options to get there. So a proposal here and kind of offer for you for CoreTech CSP is that those options to do the different paths to get from where you are to CoreTech is that we'll do a free migration from those wherever that current Azure subscription is to the CoreTech CSP. So we will not charge you to do that, to move those resources or flip those subscriptions over. Also, you'll have access to that CoreTech Azure Management Suite, that financial and governance tool that we've created. You'll pay for what you use, no upfront commitments are required. You may even incur a potential discount off of the pay-as-you-go Azure consumption. So that's something that we could definitely discuss and negotiate. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out. And then also we have the optional platinum support and AI ops being the artificial intelligence operations through our managed services if you so desire. So a lot of good value there and definitely willing to help you on that journey. And the call to action here is that if you would just like to reach out, we'll happily provide a free consultation for any of your Azure needs. We don't just work with customers that go through our CSP. If they have to stay on the EA or want to stay on the EA or have a different way of working with Azure, we're more than happy to help those customers out as well. So don't feel like we're being exclusive. And also, if you want to reach me directly for any Azure related questions here, there's my email address, my LinkedIn profile. You can hit me up on there. Be happy to at least point you in the right direction. Maybe have a conversation, see what we can do to help you. And then if you'd like to see just have more information about CoreTech in general, you can see our website. That's www.coretech.com. We just refreshed it. It looks amazing. So I'd encourage you to check it out for sure. Okay.
Outstanding. Thank you, Chris.
Yep. Absolutely. So I think we're on to just questions here. Have a couple minutes to go through these. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay. Here's a good question. So a question is around whether we provide Azure Gov in the CSP. So yeah, actually we do. So you'll see, and this is usually if you're not in the Gov space, this probably wouldn't apply to you at all, but there are some instances where you need to have all your resources in what's called the Azure US Gov National Cloud. That is something that CoreTech can provide. Not all CSPs can, but we are specifically qualified to do that. So if that is a need, we can do that. And then the other side, if it's not Gov, it's usually called commercial. Is what you'd hear otherwise. So we can do that. We can also do Azure Germany through our CSP. However, Azure China is not available for any CSPs quite yet. I'm not sure if it will be. There's some challenges there, but in general, yes, US Gov and Germany we can handle. Great. Looks like one more question here. Okay, so a question around if they were to move from one Azure AD tenant to another Azure AD tenant, is that something that can be done? So how I mentioned in the path to CSP slide is that I said within the same Azure AD tenant. So most customers there are keeping the same Azure AD, and that does make it easier for a lot of those tools. While you can go from tenant to tenant, it does make things a little bit more challenging. It's not impossible. It's not very well documented, let's just say, but there are some ways to do that. We have been doing that recently for a number of customers, and we have found out a way to do that. So if you wanted to move a subscription to our CSP, but you wanted to also set up a different Azure AD tenant for whatever reason, but keep those resources without having to completely rebuild them, we definitely can help with that. Okay, it looks like that's all the questions that we had today. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending for sure, and looking forward to answering any questions that you may have. If you want to reach out to me and on LinkedIn or email, be happy to have a conversation.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate your time and the time of everybody who participated in the webinar here today. Join us next Tuesday for complex data center migrations ahead. Make it simple. CoreTech has some great tips and tools and processes to share with you. So that would be June 9th, 2 o'clock Eastern time. All webinars and virtual events are available on our website at www.coretech.com/events. There's navigation on the top, and you can register for any of those, and we'd love to have you participate with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.